Most people think to stand out in this business, you need to be the first one on top of the story or the person with the loudest voice or the biggest ratings. In truth, to stand out in the news business, you just need to ask the right questions and demand the right answers.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome to iNews TweetLines Plus. I'm out in an unusual environment because, as I said, I'm not a journalist. I am a researcher. I'm a scientist. And many years ago, I decided to take my research skills and bring them into journalism and take a look at journalism from the research perspective as a physicist. So I'm outside doing observational research on atmospheric physics and brought my whole office out with me. So let's get started. I want to talk tonight about this is the TweetLines Plus. TweetLines Plus is a sort of an airing out of the headlines that you see in social media, because a lot of times what you see in regular media is very superficial. There's not a lot there to it, and when you go into the social media, you see a lot more variety. You see a lot more options in terms of what you have in terms of opinion. And the thing is you have people like Alex Jones, you have Michael Savage, you have on the left you have Saturday Night Live, right? A lot of the comedians, a lot of the comedy shows, they all put forward their own political views on things. A lot of times they're on the left. Well, Michael Savage, Alex Jones, and Glenn Beck tend to be on the right, or they tend to be more on the Republican side of things. And in other words, you have, in various different shows, you have these sort of comments coming out as to one side or the other, what their views are. And coming into this as an independent, I'm not on one side or the other. I'm not a person who believes in belonging to a particular party. So I'm on the independent side of things. And coming to this election, this is where you begin to see something called the Hillbots. And it's a term that popped up. It was one of the vloggers that I was watching. He calls himself a progressive. He's talking about Bernie Sanders, and this was during the point in time when he was Bernie Sanders was still in the primary. The primary was still going on. Things hadn't finalized. No one realized that Bernie would sell out and become a Hillbot, and that's what he's done now. He's sold out. He's become a Hillbot. He's repeating the establishment line. And the thing is, people expected the senator to do something completely different. But the thing is that from what I've seen over the last few years of observing what's going on in the media, there's a lot of people out there who call themselves anti-establishment or not part of the mainstream media. But yet, one of the fundamental tells of the mainstream media is the use of copyright. And so all you have to do on YouTube is to determine whether someone is establishment or not, is look down at the license. And every YouTube video has a license on it, and most YouTube licenses say standard YouTube license. In other words, they've signed an agreement with YouTube. They're more likely than not have partnered with YouTube, and now their channel has been monetized, and they can sell. They could get paid for the amount of content they put on YouTube. This is establishment, because they're not really doing anything outside the box that would prevent them, because this is in terms of service with Google, with YouTube, particularly for partnership, that you have to be within a certain standard of guideline. Well, guideline is set by the establishment. So if you agree to these guidelines and use the copyright, then you are now establishment, no matter what you say or do. Because if you're preventing other people from using your materials because it is copywritten, and this includes Daniel Yergin. This, if you're wondering, look at my channel, you see INN, Internet News. You see that there's actually I have a copyright strike by Daniel Yergin. Daniel Yergin, I was uploading his video on the prize because it was a good primer on the oil industry. You want to find out what's going on in the oil industry? You want to see who the different players are? Daniel Yergin's The Prize was the place to go. But he's eliminated it from the internet. He's actually gone in there personally and started taking down his videos. He didn't want anyone else seeing his videos. Well, of course, you paid him for it, right? But then he couldn't find the stuff anywhere. And the thing is, this is censorship. This is what's going on in the establishment today, is that you have this censorship going on. And it's not coming from the right, it's coming from the social left. In other words, the people who talk about freedom, and this includes the Hillbots, they talk about freedom, they talk about tolerance. They're the first ones to say, hey, what you're saying is hate speech, take it down. And then now they've gone, and you've seen this you go on YouTube, they're not only copyright strikes now, but there's community guideline strikes. So if you say something that somebody doesn't like, they can take down your video because I don't like what he says. This is not a free society. And the thing is, yet you'll see people up there talking about, oh, the mainstream media, the corporate media, the big buys, and and you look at their YouTube license, and they're telling you, get the word out. The United States is being taken over. We're losing our rights to free speech. You look at the line below. And this has happened with Glenn Beck. This has happened with Alex Jones. He's got InfoWars, right? Alex Jones has the InfoWars, and he's on there. How dare Obama? And he's really playing it up. And you really believe the guy. Until you start doing some background research and saying, yeah. But the kicker is, look down below. Look at his InfoWars. Look at his free information. It's all copywritten. Which means if he objects to what you put up and how you put it up, with in terms of the material that he's done, in other words, you criticize his work with his material in there, he'll take your video down. That's how the Digital Millennium Copyright Act works. This is how it works on YouTube. Anybody who has a YouTube channel for any period of time knows this. They know you can be taken down for the content that somebody else disagrees with, particularly if you have other persons, like graphics or even particularly audio. If you have someone else's content in there, even for a few seconds, your video can be taken down. This is the nature of censorship that's going on with the establishment. That's why in here, you wonder, oh, where's all the graphics? Where's my microphone? I'm not a podcast. You go on to Michael Savage is his podcast, and he's got his stuff on YouTube as well. And he's got the microphone there, and he's talking. He's talking to callers. He's raving about this and raving about that, and a lot like Rush Limbaugh. He's basically a carbon copy of Rush Limbaugh. I think Glenn Beck has done the same thing as Rush Limbaugh. Is this whole sort of pundit podcast, if you will call. These are people who are not on the mainstream. These people would have been, if you want to compare them, they would have been the people the yellers and screamers who were on radio way back when you had radio, before the internet, you would have radio talk shows, and they would be on FM, they'd be on shortwave, they'd be off on the side AM channels. They wouldn't be part of the main popular channels, they'd be sort of off to the side. And this is what's now moved on to the internet. The internet has become, particularly YouTube, has become the UHF, the ultra high frequency of the time before cable. When you had just antenna TV, you had your major channels, which were VHF. There was 12, 13 channels. You go to channel 13, and you'd have the second dial there, the second dial on the TV. This is for people who are older. The second dial on the TV was something called UHF, and UHF had a lot of different channels. This is where you could have tons of channels. And the UHF, on the viewership wasn't that large. It tended to have a lot of offbeat channels that were not particularly popular. And so it didn't, but the thing is, the way UHF worked, it really didn't matter, because you didn't have to have large facilities to do UHF. You can get away with a small facility to do UHF. So a lot of small operators were on UHF. And so you would have people like the Christian Broadcast News Network. You would have, they also started off on shortwave. You have Jerry Farwell. Most of your Christian evangelists started off on shortwave, then moved to eventually UHF, and then eventually into cable and so on and so forth. So you have this environment now moving into YouTube, because YouTube is rather easy to set up and get going. So you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. So a small operation can get up and get started. And this is why you have the punditry, particularly on the internet or on your YouTube, that you have today. And yet you have a huge amount of this punditry that claims to be independent, that claims to be anti-establishment. And yet, and I've talked to people about this, they don't understand why the Digital Millennium Copyright and the copyright itself is a fundamental violation of the history. If you go into the history of free speech in the United States was, in the whole American view of the world, was a revolutionary one. They revolted against the King of England, and they wanted to throw off the tyranny of authority. The American Revolution was a revolution of anti-establishment. They didn't want an authority telling them what you could and could not say, what was legal and what was not legal to say, what information you could and couldn't have. This was the point. This was the very impetus, the very purpose of the First Amendment. Yet in 1990, that's completely gone now. And you all see this and the thing is, it's not the Republicans who are putting people in jail for this. It's Democrats. It's Barack Obama who went after Eric Snowden, who went after people like now Chelsea Manning. What must have gone on to Chelsea Manning, because he was a man beforehand. He was he was actually the person who gave Julian Assange his information. If you wonder how Julian Assange ends up in the Ecuadorian embassy, it's because of what Chelsea Manning had done. He gave access to Julian Assange all that information, and Julian Assange published it. And for months, even for years, Manning had disappeared. No one knew where he was. And that's because Obama had still had the effect of having the state of emergency law in there. In other words, even though after George Bush, the attacks on 9/11 had been fairly much over, Obama felt the need to keep the power that's within the state of emergency for himself, and then began to use it to overthrow governments without approval from Congress. And that's what happened. This is what you saw in Libya. This is what you saw in Ukraine. This is what you're seeing now in Syria. And the information about this was leaked out by Chelsea Manning, and then also by Eric Snowden, who eventually was able to escape and ended up in Russia, of all places. And he's living a good life in Russia, and he's more or less a celebrity for doing in Russia what would have been, he would have done, this would have been illegal in Russia, he would have been put in jail and executed. But Russia has changed. But the American mindset, particularly with Obama and the people in the State Department, they're stuck in the 80s, they're stuck on Cold War. These are the chicken hawks, and these are the people who've done, they are intellectuals, because they've created their own minds, they've created their own view of things. And this is the sort of the mindset of a Hillbot. A Hillbot is basically a socialist who rejects reality for the concepts that they've injected into their own reality and now view as reality. And this is what a Hillbot is. A Hillbot is a person who says, this is the way things have to be. They're there for a cause. Now, the people who they're supposed to be helping doesn't matter. It's the cause that is the fundamental. And this is the nature of a Hillbot. This is the nature of a social left. These are the people who are voting for Hillary Clinton. And they don't care that she killed 4 people in Benghazi. They don't care about that. That is not an issue to them. Because to the socialists, killing a few people in order to help the benefit of the good, the larger society, that's not an issue. The left have always excused death and murder as being a necessity for society in order to bring about progress. In other words, they do progress through murder. And this is the nature of a Hillbot. The Hillbot is not going to be, it cannot be taught, cannot be changed because they are robotic. They follow along with Hillary Clinton, line and step. This is indoctrination. They will not change because their minds are now locked into the philosophy of Hillary Clinton, right? And the people who are backing her. The same thing now with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was winning. You could see his rallies. He had huge people at his rally as compared to Hillary Clinton. How did he lose? Simple. Everyone agreed that Hillary Clinton rigged the primary elections, and it was known. This was sort of accepted. And what did the Bernie Sanders people do? A lot of them, and particularly Bernie Sanders, oh well, this is the way politics is, and they fell in line behind Hillary Clinton. Is this free thinking? Is this activism? Is this really what you're about? If you say, oh yeah, I'm an activist, I get out there and I make change, is this change? Falling in line behind somebody because the election was rigged? This is your reality? Is this what you're accepting? And the thing is, people, oh well, Donald Trump, he's exactly the same. Okay. Let's see what you can find on the internet. You know, don't just take the mainstream media word for it. Go out and see what's around there. And you see that a lot of people, particularly on both the left and the right, are upset with Donald Trump. Oh, he's going to destroy the country. Right? George W. Bush, George Sr., he's like that. You've got a lot of Republicans, particularly in the core of the Republicans, who don't like Donald Trump. They say he's a wild card. He's going to be disastrous for the United States. And they're doing everything they can to destroy him. If this is a person who is not different, who's not outside the establishment, then why does the establishment care so much about what he's doing? Why are they freaking out the way they are? And this gives you an idea to think, well, maybe there's something more there. And of course, there is something more. If you're an independent free thinker, and that's not what I am, I think for myself, and Hillbots are not free thinkers, no matter what they say. If you fall in line with somebody just because you're falling in line and not thinking about it, you're not a free thinker, no matter what you say. And that's why, if you say you're anti-establishment, and you look down below, and the license says standard YouTube license. Mine is Creative Commons, and I have an addendum in my description saying my license is free speech, supporting free speech, that you can use it whatever any way you want to. Then you're not anti-establishment. And here's the thing: what is Trump for? Trump is for small government. In other words, if you want to be an activist and get out and do something yourself, you can, because the government's not going to be in your way. If you go with Obama and Hillary Clinton, who's going to continue on with Obama's policies, including attacking Russia and starting a third world war, then guess what can happen? You're going to have a lot of government around you, and if you're an activist and you want to do something to help somebody out, you're not going to be able to do it because the government's not going to allow you to do it. Here's the thing: if you're an activist and you want to help somebody, you want to do real philanthropy, not going to happen. Why? Because you're competing with a government agency. You're competing with government jobs. It's the government jobs. It's creating government jobs. This is how a socialist creates jobs. But the problem is, look at Greece. Look what's happening. Look what's happening in Europe. Look at the collapse of the economics in Europe. Why is this happening? Because with a monolithic economy, that's a socialist economy. That's going on now in Europe. That's going on in the United States. Going on in Canada. And is causing this financial collapse. What's going on with the monolithic economy? It's very simple. It's dead. What happens is when the government controls everything, the consumers are the employees, and in order for an employee to get a product, they have to be paid by the government, and then of course the government needs to sort of collect that money back, but you can't, because how do you collect money from a person who you have to give money to in order to buy the product? In other words, you want to get a car, you're going to get it from the government, right? The government's going to pay you to get the car. Who are you going to give that money to? You're going to give it back to the government, because the government owns the company that produces the car, right? In order to keep all those workers and union workers employed, right? The government owns the car company. So the money goes nowhere. It stays locked within its own system. And in that situation, in a monolithic situation, the economy is fundamentally dead. And this is what's going on. And you hear all these people talking about, the dollar's going to die. We're talking about fiat currency. It's not a fiat currency. It's not over debt. It's not a lot of these things, these terms that a lot of these economic professors talk about. It's the one thing. It's a monolithic economy, and there's nowhere for the money to go. And this is what happens with Obama. This is what's going to happen with Hillary, and it's historic. You can actually see it in history like this. Go to any socialist country, and you'll see that this has happened before. It's not new. So what's going to make it different with Hillary? But the thing is, a lot of people don't care. The Hillbots will vote for Hillary simply because it's a woman president, and it's the concept rather than the reality that they're working on. Anyways, I'm going to leave this here for now, and I will talk to you. This is where I make mistakes here. I'm thinking again, my vlog. If you want independent, you need less government. And the only thing the Trump is going to do for you is give you less government. And that's why you vote for him. Not because there's more government, because you want less government. You want government out of your way so that you can be independent, you can be free. And I will see you in the next TweetLine Plus. All right. Bye-bye.
INN. Provoke, inform, and change. We deal with issues that other networks won't.
Welcome to the library, and I am the librarian. I am the professor. And professor of what? Professor of physics.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
Free speech rules here at Democratic Earth.